Hi, this is David Bowie, and you're watching X Large.
X Large.
Watch this.
X Large.
Keep it up, guys. This and other Link Ray favourites will be on X Large tonight with us Tin Machine.
X Large.
It's exciting, it's wonderful. Try it.
We come out, ladies and gentlemen, David Bowie.
Good evening.
Do you have any questions?
Are we starting?
Oh, come on.
Roll the film.
Impress me.
Ring a roses.
Meh, rock, 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 meh.
I'm speechless.
Oh, Rudy.
Camera's sort of farting away. Is it?
Safe sucks. Yeah, you want me to stop, huh?
Everybody will have had a very interesting time, but it's still the same as it ever was, at the least. And I think some might quite like it.
I'll tell you, Rudy.
David Bowie is not David Bowie.
I don't know what image I personally have. David Bowie himself, rather David Jones, Jonesy.
A conviction that comes from an honesty with myself,
Not that I'm a socialist.
which is always a problem when one is not quite sure what oneself is.
It's not that I'm anything.
Coming back to the main theme, sex.
Sexist rock and roll.
I only have responsibility to myself.
This is myself too.
You like that man? I know that man.
What would you like me to tell you about?
When I first started in rock and roll, I actually wanted to be a theatre actor.
It's easy to work with people who know exactly what they want to do.
He has a lot of strange ideas.
Old chap. Alarming lapses of taste. There seems to be a nostalgic kind of thing going on for the 70s at the moment, especially in England. I'm not sure where that comes from. I mean, I hope it's not just because of our silly clothes that we used to wear. And if I have to join it, I refuse to wear the Stack-Heel boots. Or shave me eyebrows. Or dye me hair red.
Time takes a cigarette, puts it in your mouth. You pull on your finger, then another finger, then cigarette. The water wall is calling, it lingers, then you forget. Oh, ho, 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 you're a rock and roll suicide. You're too old to lose it, too young to choose it. And the clock waits so patiently on your song. You walk past the cafe, but you don't eat when you've lived too long. Oh no, 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 you're a rock and roll suicide.
more and more, the older that I get, I think I find I'm drawn more to the idea of the quality of my life and the process the way that I live, rather than the end result, which I must admit was sort of foremost in my mind when I was in my 20s and wanting to be a paragon of rock and roll intensity or something.
Ship breaks a snarling as you stumble across the road. But the day breaks instead, so you hurry home. Don't let the sun blast your shadow. Don't let the milk float grab your mind. They're so natural, religiously unkind. Oh no, love, you're not alone. You're watching yourself, but you're too unfair. You've got your head all tangled up, but a fuck can only make you care. Oh no, love, you're not alone. No matter what or who you've been, no matter when or where you've seen, all the knives seem to lacerate your brain. I've had my share, I'll help you with the pain. You're not alone. He was in a band at the time called the Conrads, and they would play, this goes back, and they were sort of one of the top groups at the time. But we both went to the same school, and he was already in the art form, being taught by my father, who was the head of the art department. David and I and other people would hang out in the art block stairwell, actually, because it was a terrific echo chamber. And my father used to leave it unlocked at lunchtime so we could sneak in there. And, you know, bring our guitars and play Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and whatever in fact, I learned about Buddy Holly from David. Ziggy play guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly. Spiders from Mars, he played it left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band.
Those were really extraordinarily experimental times. I think everybody had a real sense of adventure and were grabbing onto every kind of freedom that they could. I mean, it was the tail end of the 60s. There was still that spirit of you can try anything, and that will be, you know, a real way of making life exciting.
The fashion at that time was, you know, everybody wore things so tight, you know, it was murder getting these things on. And I always thought, well, these people are ice-capades. You see them doing all this and flying around, and they wear skin-tight stuff. So I got into the ice-capade stuff. So Mock was basically wearing the stuff that ice skaters used to wear. He's a very clever guy, you know. And he thinks a lot, and he kind of does what he thinks, you know. He's kind of very... He gets an idea, maybe, and he zooms right in there, and he wants that, and he goes for that, you know. And that I really admire about him, you know. He's very straightforward, really.
London by ta-ta, strange young town. London by ta-ta, brought me down. Don't like your new face, that's not nice. Got to go far, far. London by ta-ta. G, 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 take me away. G, 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 take me today.
But David's a very catalytic writer, you know. He draws from what is happening around him. So yes, because we were together very much and very happy at that time, I suppose it is a picture. I'm sure there are, you know, patterns and pictures that we painted that went into his brain and came out as songs. So it's very close to me. I enjoy it very much. I find I'm embarrassed now because it shows my age if I stand there and really tap my foot to an old David Bowie tune. But of course, to me, it gives me great pleasure, you know, because I remember good times and a lot of constructive and positive energy.
I think pre myself, image was part and parcel of what the rock artist presented, per se. It was, he had one image, that was an image he wished to project of himself, and it would represent himself not only on stage but off stage. It was his real, true essence as seen through the mass media.
They put you down, they say I'm wrong. You take a thing, you put them on. Rebel, rebel, you've torn your dress. Rebel, rebel, your face is a mess. It's rebel, rebel, how could they know? Hot tramp, I love you so.
I believe that I was the first rock artist to start presenting characters on stage, delivering my particular pieces of music. The pieces of music did structure their lives. So for me, the image, I never actually had an image. I had this kind of entourage of characters that followed me around.
As Ziggy Stardust.
I can't help but have a soft spot for Ziggy Stardust. I mean, not that I'd ever want to portray him again, but it certainly was sort of fun at the time.
Making love with Ziggy, Ziggy is sucked up into his mind.
The majority of it came from Japan, actually. At the same time that I was writing the album, the costumes, and they were costumes really, of Kansai Yamamoto.
Oh yeah!
Ziggy's fun now. He doesn't scare me anymore.
Hello. Oh, I'm David Bowie. I live down the road.
Don't forget Bing Crosby.
Our finest gifts we bring, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum.
Peace on earth, can it be? Years from now, perhaps we'll see.
All right, forget Bing Crosby. Okay.
I met him in 1971 in a bar, and I worked a little bit on Raw Power with him in 1973. I don't kind of like make records, you know, like sitting, make a little record. It's not easy to work with anyone if they're good. Anybody good is, all good artists are generally quirky weirdos, basically, you know, and really cranky and hard, not so easy to get along with. But it was good to work with him on the level of excitement. It's a good excitement working with him.
Just a perfect day. Feed animals in the zoo. Then later, a movie too, and then home. Oh, it's such a perfect day.
truly believe in doing it right in the first place. I really believe that if you do it wrong and then try to fix it later, that it's a nightmare. But if I get something that's good, emotionally good, and it has mistakes in it, I don't care. I'll keep the mistakes. I'll go for the feeling every time.
I've never sort of been one for the virtuoso. I mean, I think as long as the energy and at least a summoned anger is that for me is enough. I don't care if the guy can't play more than 3 chords. It's the attitude that he has when he plays them. You know? They were recording there, and David knew that I was in town and phoned me up and asked me if I'd come down and if I'd like to go down and see what was happening, so I went down. And these things happen, you know, suddenly you're writing something together, and it was totally spontaneous. I mean, it certainly wasn't planned. It was peculiar.
He just happened to come into the studio, and we were fooling around and then just sort of jamming with tracks, and suddenly we said, why don't we just see what we can do on the spur of the moment, and then that sort of actually progressed and sort of snowballed into actually becoming a fully fledged song, and so out came Under Pressure. Pressure, pushing down on me, pressing down on you, no matter what. Under pressure, the burns will build me down, splits the family in two, people on streets.
It is aptly named Under Pressure, really. There's a lot of frenetic activity because there's the 4 of us who are just on the edge of being in balance, you know, and then there's this other huge personality who comes in, and it was, I mean, almost too stimulating. You know, we got to the point where we couldn't really agree on anything, and it became hard. But having said that, I think the song turned out very good. I mean, a great, large amount of credit to Mr. Bowie, who at the last minute reorganised the words, and like is the sound of the record. I never thought we got a decent mix out of it. It's very strange because our new record company's been doing remixes of selected tracks, and a prime candidate would have been Under Pressure, but no one can find the multi-track, which is a damn shame.
Oh, that was a clown thing to do. I mean, we only did it for Live Aid because it was. They asked us if we'd make a contribution, and the only thing we could think to do was do a song that we both knew. We did the whole thing, the record and the video, in 24 hours. We started on a Friday evening and finished on Sunday morning. We just worked through for like the whole 24 hours. It was worth doing that.
They pulled in just behind the bridge. He lays her down. He frowns. Gee, my life's a funny thing. Am I still too young? He kissed her there and there. She took his ring, took his babies. It took him minutes, took her nowhere. Heaven knows he'd have taken anything. All night, she was a young American.
I'd always written from city to city. I'd written because of the friction of a place like New York or London or Berlin or whatever, and I would work from the exterior, and what I felt on the outside would come into the music.
Come on, come on.
If we think we're gonna make it, you better hang on to your side. We don't dance, we don't talk much, we just wanna play with every move around like tigers on Backstreet. You know the rhythm comes up better on a strolling guitar. Through the blessing with the spiders from Mars.
Because I bounce off environments so readily. I think if I'm in one environment too long, it shows in my music, it starts getting stale. And that's why I seem to spend most of my life on the hop.
My love, wherever you are, whatever you are, don't lose faith. I know it's gonna happen someday to you.
A man called Charlie got me out of Los Angeles. No, Los Angeles, I think, for me, became the low point in a sort of a tormented lifestyle at the time. I was undergoing great psychological strain, self-imposed again, as I think most rock artists get themselves into positions of wondrous ridiculousness. I myself have been one of the forerunners of that kind of exploit. And during that particular period, I was mixing with a pretty crazy crowd and living a lifestyle which was one not to be envied. And I really needed to break it once and for all if I was going to save my own sanity and restructure my own way of living. And so I had to get away, and Europe seemed the natural place to come to.
You rarely find that. You rarely find that kind of atmosphere. Parts of London you find that, and parts of New York. But it really permeates the whole of this particular town.
Du könntest schwimmen wie Delfine. Delfine ist schön. Niemand gibt uns eine Chance.
Which I wrote in Hans' studio just down there by the wall.
Even to this day, I don't really know what I was talking about. In fact, a lot of what I talked about at that particular point, I really don't have any recollection of what I meant by most of it. A lot of it was to do with my own predilection and obsession for English mythology at the time. I was very much into the Arthurian spirit and the whole idea of Glastonbury and the Holy Grail, and I had one of those intense problems, if you know what I mean. And I think everything else probably came out of that. Of course, the first thing that happened in Berlin is that I had great confrontations with that among my newly acquired German friends there, many of whom had parents who were involved in the Third Reich. And so the kind of the infantile fascination that I had for that period was quickly blown away, I think.
The only time that I had a true collaboration, I think, was with Brian Eno on my albums. And I enjoyed that experience a lot because we thought very differently from each other, which is always the best of any collaboration. When you think too much alike, I think there's nothing happens. But working with Brian was great.
I think the paranoia about being confined in one particular area of the arts, of either singing, just period, or just being a songwriter or performer, sort of makes me uncomfortable, and so I do take every opportunity to reduce that to a shambles.
I think one helps the other. I've always noticed that my painting style has always reflected some aspect of what I'm writing about in songs. The feeling of the songs has the same feeling as the paintings.
That's all. That's all. That's all.
I found that you can apply the same tools to art, to painting as you can to music, and then to theatre. And that if you basically know what you want to say, it's you layer things like you do in a painting. You get a rough skeletal shape and then you flesh it out with the paints. And I found that I could apply that to music and I could apply that to theatre. So I felt always that one helps the other.
Well, to look at that question in a different fashion, I think it would be nice to find that I could put all the aspects of my personality cohesively into one art form.
I have a home. This is my home. This is my home. I have a home. I have for as long as I like.
That is what home is.
That is what is home.
Jack Hofsis, the director, having heard that I'd seen the play and presumably had liked it, came to see me in New York in the early part of this year and asked me if I would take over the role at the end of this year, at this period. And I immediately said yes, having never been asked to do anything like that before. I had training with the Lindsay Kemp Mime Company in London many years ago. But I think it probably helped far more than anything else for me to be able to do the physical part of the role.
Well, you are a famous actress.
I am not unknown.
You must display yourself for a living, then, like I did.
No. Oh, that is not myself, Mr. Merrick. That is an illusion. Oh, this. This is myself.
This is myself, too.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. When it's successful, I love it. But when it isn't successful, I think, what the hell am I doing in this? You know, because sometimes you can start a movie and within 2 weeks you can look at the other people and say, this is a piece of rubbish. And you say, yeah. They say, well, let's just have a good time for 8 weeks, you know, and you wonder why you start. And
Japanese filmmaker called Oshima, who's one of my favorite filmmakers. And I was flattered that he approached me to do his movie, which he, in fact, first talked to me about it about 2 years ago when I first talked with you. And I never really thought it would come to anything, but then he got the finances that he needed, and he phoned me up about 3 weeks before he began filming. And we went to the South Pacific to an island called Rarotonga, and stayed there for 6 weeks. And he had edited a rough edit of the film within 4 days of getting back to Japan, I believe.
Hi, this is Patsy Kensit.
Very attractive. I think that should encourage a lot of people to go and see the movie.
They're not as good as most actors. I mean, rock musicians are not necessarily good actors, I don't think.
We don't sell things. We sell dreams.
Rich! Mellow!
Deadly!
Radiant!
Fresh!
King size!
What I hear? Do you see what I see? Carla, I want you to use your imagination. You wake up one morning and you ask yourself,
Why am I so exciting? What makes me dramatic? You're trying to say something about yourself. This dazzling crime of wisdom. There's an image I can recommend. There's a product you will die for. Here's a nightmare that will never end. Get you fired up, burning till you go, 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 go. That's motivation.
wait, I have a better plan.
Who are you?
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. It'll show you your dreams. There. It's further than you think.
The Goblin King is unlike any Goblin King you've ever seen. As played by David Bowie, he weaves his magic spell around Sarah, whatever means he can.
For a long time now, I felt that rock and cinema were destined to meet. I think MTV has subsequently become a proven ground that people will watch music and action for considerable lengths of time.
Everything I've done for you. I move the stars for no one.
Of the 5 songs that I was asked to write for this film, one of them was the title track.
One live underground, one live underground, one live underground, one live underground. I'm living underground.
I wanted something very emotional, and for me, the most emotional music I can think of is gospel.
Little bit louder now, little bit louder now, little bit louder now. I'm living underground.
Okay, 6 times on that. Hold it, folks.
terms of anything I've done on film, I quite like the old vampire played in a Hunger. I like that. And I liked the little John Landis cameo that I did. Those are my two personal favourites.
I love you in the morning sun, I love you in my dreams. I love the sound of making love, the feeling of your skin, the corner of your eyes. I long forevermore, I never want to say goodnight, miracle goodnight. Oh, turn it around, make it alright. Nobody dancing, miracle goodnight. Turn it around, make it alright. Nobody dancing. It was only make-believe. Turn it around, make it alright.
My own relationship with women has been quite fun up until now, so I don't really have much to go on in that particular sense.
I'm bored.
I want to be entertained. Can my pharaoh find some way to entertain his queen?
People write their own wedding ceremonies now. There's probably a wedding business out there.
I've lived all over the world. I've left every place.
I did not get married for old-fashioned reasons. I did not get married in a church, and we got married basically because the British immigration kept sending me out of the country, which you're too young to remember things like that, but at that time in England it was, you know, if you didn't have a certain type of visa, you know, you had to keep leaving the country. And I had a student's visa which allowed you to be there at college, not all the time. So when I met David and we fell in love and then we wanted to be together all the time, it was a bit difficult because I kept having to leave the country. So for that reason we got married.
Angie, Angie, when will those clouds all disappear? Angie, Angie, where will it lead us from here?
I see myself as a more female sex symbol, you know?
You can't ever lie. God will get you.
Angie, Angie.
I write pretty much totally about sex and 20% about politics and social comment. I've never believed in changing anything that isn't next door. I don't have a kind of a banner that I wave and a searchlight and a bell that goes off. I don't kind of feel like that about it. I reckon that if everyone just was real good to the people they know and the people around them and maybe their neighbors, that would be enough. And the music business, we always talk about the music business. It's so boring. Let's talk about the shoe business. People that manufacture shoes.
Okay.
In
You gotta be
any
strong.
business, you gotta know what you're doing and what you want.
When you're a boy, you can buy a home chair.
On a bad day, I'll tell you nothing. There's nothing left to be said. On a good day, you can always say something differently.
Well, I guess that the idea was right, and I think the premises were correct. But maybe my karma wasn't good enough for it to be a success, or maybe David's wasn't. I really don't know. But I definitely know that although such a perfect premise should have worked, it didn't.
Go quick before something happens.
Two psychiatrists, no, rather two psychics passing each other in the street, and one says to the other, "You're doing all right, how am I?"
Love me, love me, love me, love me, say you do. Let me fly away with you. For my love is like the wind, and wild is the wind. Wild is the wind. You touch me, I hear the sound.
I'm speechless, you can't. Look, let's cut.
Well, I usually storyboard my videos to the best of my ability, I just wanted it to be the last of the artist as actor type movies, finding his reality with his mother.
Do you remember a guy that's true?
But the funniest one of all is me for real when I'm not doing any of the characters. I find me very sort of almost clown-like. In fact, that's what led to the clown idea for the Scary Monsters thing.
They got a message from the action man.
And the idea of the clown costume came from the Lindsay Kemp company that I used to, so there was a little bit of myself in it in that way. The Lindsay Kemp mime company that I was with in the late 60s, and it was a reproduction of one of the costumes that Lindsay used to wear.
Ashes to ash.
For me personally, I've always tried to make the subject matter of the video as important as the song. I've never tried consciously to throw away a video on a glamour shoot, you know, glamour kind of thing. And that's why I've always tried working with directors who had the same kind of obsessiveness about what they're doing as I do. I think it's time that promotional films can maybe get a little more serious. So I tried. I didn't want to put the Aborigines into a tribal situation because that's a focus that I understand that they're also unhappy with. They want to be regarded, and quite rightly so, as very much part of a new, modern Australia, and they're not being allowed that door in. But on other times you work on something and it's so great and things are working and you can feel what the director wants and you know that this director has a vision and you go with it and that's great.
Baby, yearning, baby, can, baby, talking, baby, will, baby, thinking, baby, walk, baby, lost, baby, found, baby, yearning, baby, can, baby, talking, baby, will, baby, thinking, baby, walk, baby, lost, baby, found.
guitar. As long as it's loud, I'm happy.
Hello humans, can you feel me thinking? I assume you're seeing everything I'm thinking. Hello humans, nothing starts tomorrow. I'm the baby now. Baby universe, baby universe, baby universe.
I've lost audiences many times over the years, and they've come back again for another reason or another thing. And I sort of got that mutual agreement with them. If it's not going very well, then they stay away. And then if they like what I'm doing, they come back again.
I can't read, I can't write down. I don't know, book from countdown. I don't know which shadow gets me. All I've got is someone's face. Money goes to money heaven. Bodies go, body hell. I just sit and watch the chase.
Hi, Rudy.
The characters scare me, quite honestly, to look at, some of them. Thin White Duke, obviously, is the most scary of the lot, because he was the most really screwed up and paranoid of the lot.
I never felt that confident of my own abilities as a performer, singing just one-to-one with the audience. But also, on the other hand, the idea of characterization always fascinated me. I thought it was fun to involve rock music more in theatrics.
Well, the repetition of a night-to-night event, yeah, I can find that very troublesome. Again, it's a question of trying to retain conviction all the way through. But generally, I think that when you actually hit the stage, the adrenaline is such that the conviction comes back there.
Well, of course, I mean, rock started in 1952, 53. I mean, it's inevitable that there's going to be a period when that particular age comes up, and all of us who are 40, we all grew up on that same music, so it's still our music. It's not suddenly only. I mean, sometimes I hear the reapproachment that rock music is only for young people. Well, that's fine, except that's kind of a reactionary statement, because that's what my father used to say. He used to say, oh, teenage music. So it's kind of me. I think things have to be modified and reevaluated. Rock music, per se, is definitely part of the culture of the 40-year-olds now. There's another kind of music for younger people. They're not quite so into rock music, some of them. Maybe rock music is something for, 30, 40.
My relationship to drugs is not very good at the moment. I don't have one.
I've left the fast lane. It's very hard to convince people that you're not that you can be quite different off stage in rock and roll than you are on stage, because it's part of the one of the principles of rock is that it's the person himself expressing what he really and truly feels from there, and that applies to a lot of artists. But to me, it doesn't. It never did. I always saw it as a theatrical experience.
I tend to write frantically and very quickly when I do start writing. The trouble is I tend to intellectualize it afterwards, which is something I should leave alone. One never learns from those kinds of mistakes.
I'm influenced by the Russian deconstructivist Igor Stopolot out of Leningrad. I learnt mostly everything I know from him. He taught the black men. Igor. 1973, he taught the Americans how to play the blues.
Camera's sort of farting away. Is it going to come up on... has an indigestion problem. It's eaten too much celluloid.
think that he should get some time. I say he should watch his ass, my friend. Don't listen to the crowd.
I haven't worked with Niall since about 1983 on the Let's Dance album. And in those days, I think the difference with working with Niall then and working with Niall now is that I would leave him to do far more of the arrangements on that particular album, on Let's Dance. And we met again to make this album at a club after a couple of the Tin Machine performances in New York. He came along to the shows. And we got talking afterwards and talked about what we liked in music, what we didn't like in music, and all that. And a lot of our ideas seemed very similar. So we really made a kind of a commitment that if I was going to do another solo album, that I'd work with him on it, because so many of our musical ideas were parallel. And then when I did eventually start writing the album, I called him up and asked if he wanted to go in with me still, and he said yeah. And what I found was the major change with working with Niall this time around is that probably I'm contributing a lot more to how I wanted the songs to work, to a much greater degree than the last time we worked together. He doesn't use the telephone as much, and he was there on the mixes.
When comes the shaking man, a nation in his eyes, striped with blood and emblazed tattoo, streaking cathedral spires.
Because of his broad musical background and the type and the taste that he has, I know that it's going to be very, very exciting for me as a musician, but at the same time that there is a point of view. I mean, we are going someplace.
They say he has no move, they say he was born.
And Mick Ronson, of course. Ronson I brought in to the Queen concert last year with Ian Hunter of Mott the Hoople, and we did a version of All the Young Blues. And at that particular time I said that I told Mick that I would really love to work with him in the studio again. I've worked with him off and on over the years, because every time we've done a tour since 1974, he's usually turned up at some of the gigs and jammed with us on stage. But we haven't done any studio work before. And the decision to make I Feel Free the cut that we work on is because in the very early Spider days, that was one of our encore numbers, that Cream number. And it was kind of nice to complete the circle. Where they're bringing you in is the solo, and then just
I don't
keep
know where that is.
Right where you're coming in.
Technique. Technique's just technique, you know. I mean, monkeys can learn technique, you know. But I'm a bit lax on the old technique, really. I mean, I'm a bit lazy in that way, you know. I wish I would be a little bit more disciplined in that way, but I can't be, I mean. But that's just me, you know, and I'm just me.
And Lester indeed is I think one of the greatest trumpet players around at the moment. He much occupies the space that Miles Davis had up until he died. As regards how my songwriting has changed or not changed over the years, an interesting thing happened the other day. I read an article in one of the musical papers over in England. The magazine's called the NME. And they republished an interview with me from 1973, a 3-page interview, verbatim, exactly as it was. And I seem to be describing my songwriting methods in exactly the same way as I write now, that I was talking about how I was cutting up different points of view and different opinions and put them against each other. In fact, what I was talking about was the same juxtaposition that I still use in songwriting to this very day. So I think basically, overall, my songwriting style hasn't really changed. I may have added to it and involved new, different processes and different ways of working, but fundamentally it's still the same as it ever was.
Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. There's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. Size, but never leave the stream of warm permanent sand. So the days float through my eyes, but still the days seem the same. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't tell them to grow up out of it. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Where's your shame you've left us up to an accident? Time may change me, but you can't trace time. Strange fascination, fascinating. Changes are taking the base.